What is going on, everybody? I hope everybody's having a great Wednesday evening or late afternoon, depending on where you are. Uh, so I had this thing that I said that when I came back to streaming, I really wanted to start doing at least 2 to 3 concrete streams a week. And me and Ted, no matter what name you want to call him, I'll just call him Ted. Ted86. His real name. He's got a couple different aliases he goes by, but we've been talking and we're thinking about doing this on a weekly basis. We're gonna see how this works and we'll go from there. Instead of me screwing up and making mistakes, because Ted's got kind of a little bit of a list of stuff that he is involved with, and I want to do it justice. So I'm just gonna let him get into this.
Thanks, Aaron. You kind of froze there for a second, but I'll assume that everything is working okay here. Or maybe I'll wait for you to get back. Yeah, it seems like Aaron's frozen. Yeah, the Ted Show. You guys don't want to see me by myself. But anyway, let me introduce myself. I'm Ted Hazelrig, Ted H6. I do some writing for 49ers Hive and 49ers Cap and 49ers, the Sports Illustrated through Grant Cohn. And excited to be here on the show with Aaron. And now it seems like I'm split between two cameras. Hopefully, Aaron will be back soon. Um, yeah, I'm a Bay Area resident, lifelong 49ers fan, and excited to talk a little bit about this season coming up here. But perhaps maybe what I'll do is wait. I'm going to turn off my camera since I'm split between two screens here and just wait for Aaron to get back. So Aaron just messaged me, says he's rebooting his computer, so he should be back shortly. Sorry for the delay, everybody. But we will be back shortly with our topics to discuss. I would jump into them, but I don't want to do that without him. So we'll see you in just a moment.
All right.
Hey,
We are back. Sorry about that, everyone who came into the stream and had me drop. Apparently, my computer rebooted and I had to reset my internet. So, for
yeah,
for everybody who is waiting to hear anything, I don't know. I don't know if you've started talking or if you've just been waiting.
no, I just gave a quick intro about myself, talked about where I write, and I guess I should have mentioned that I'm also going to start a YouTube channel of my own called TED Talks Ball. So that is in the finishing stages, and hopefully in the next week or so, I should be able to launch that. And maybe next week we can do this together on my show, and
Absolutely.
take turns back and forth. So.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. To me, it's like sometimes it's nice when you don't have to do all the the going through the questions and you just sit there and someone asks you questions. It's kind of nice. It's a little bit of a like because I do the NWO show Monday with Beto, 49er Minded, and No Border Sports, and I'm doing Fridays now with Me and the Dream. And I wanted to have kind of set schedule like a lot of people on YouTube and not really go outside of that too much just because it makes less anxiety in my brain. So I figure
Well,
we
and
get
people know where to find you that way too,
right.
right?
And well, I took a break, a little social media or YouTube break, a little mental health break because I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and I needed to kind of take a step back. I was just feeling kind of burned out a little bit, and it was good. It kind of reignited, and the fact that the Niners are kind of having one of these interesting, not real good starts to this actually gives me more energy to talk because I've kind of become the old fan, which is somewhat hypercritical of the 49ers. And that's just the style of the person that I am. I have a nephew who's the same way. Some people are, they try to see the positive and everything, and then some people just kind of call it like it is. So it's whatever everybody's preferences, I guess. But I think we could just get right into this one. And what was your overall observation, your overall takeaway from just how poorly Jimmy Garoppolo played this past Monday night?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, I guess since then it's kind of come out that the botch snap was on Brendel, that he snapped at a count too late. I still think a better QB would have adjusted for that. But I do understand that. I mean, I played a little QB myself in high school, and so I do understand that timing on the snap count is crucial, and that could definitely be an excuse. But there was so much more that went wrong in that game besides that. A lot of times on Twitter, I'll call Jimmy Jimbo overthrow. He overthrew Debo on the sideline for what looked like easily could have been at least a huge gain, a much bigger gainer, or a touchdown potentially. Um, he threw behind Debo when it bounced off K'Wan Williams's helmet. He threw behind, or I guess into traffic with Debo for the interception. There were some misses to Ayuk. Um, there was so much that Jimmy did wrong, and some of it you can write off to the fact that he missed a lot of OTA, all of OTAs, and most of preseason, every preseason game, and just he didn't get the playbook till August 29th. Now, granted, he's had 5 other playbooks that are probably pretty similar, so um, and he has some stinker games to start seasons almost every season anyway. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think he deserves a lot of blame ultimately, and seeing him smile at the end of the game really upset me the same way as with Brent Jones.
Yep.
He seemed like he had just carried the team and won the game, rather than, I don't know. There are some people I got into arguments with during the offseason when that NFL Top 100 list came out, and they had him supposedly phantom ranked 106 because he didn't make the top 100, but supposedly they released the 101 to 110, and he was 106. I said, like, he looked kind of like the 106th best player in Denver on Sunday night, right? I mean, out of the 253, and I know all 53 don't play each game, but still, he where do you go? He was terrible, and he didn't seem to take any accountability after the game. Not only was he smiling, but the things he said was even worse. He never takes blame for anything. It's always this or that. It's like, week 2, he comes in and it's like riding a bike, and all of a sudden now he's rusty. That's one thing I loved about Trey Lance is right from the get go, he really seemed to take accountability and just say, "Hey, look, it's all on me." I feel like great leaders do that. They say, "It's all my fault," even if they don't believe it is all their fault. They take the blame to protect their teammates, and they kind of duck praise to make sure their teammates get the praise. Like, "Oh, hey, great job, you great win." They say, "Oh, no, no, it was my teammates. They did it, and without them, I couldn't have won." That type of thing. And we're starting to see Kyle Shanahan at least start to take some responsibility, which is a good sign, because that was one of my big pet peeves with him for a long time. It seemed like last year in 2021 when he finally started to take some credit for, like saying, "Hey, this is on me, us losing, being 3-5 or whatever it was." And then that seemed like really when the team started to turn around and really start to respond for him. So I'd love to see a lot more of all that from Jimmy G, since the only alternative at this point is Brock Purdy, and I don't think he's the answer. The only one thing I'd say about Brock Purdy is I think he'd at least improve, and I really just don't see Jimmy G improving. I think he'll be better than he was Sunday night, but I don't think he'll ever be good.
That was a game to me where I was expecting the worst, but hoping for the best when I was watching that game Sunday night. I'll be honest.
And then we got that tease, that second drive of the game where it was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. And I even tweeted it because, if I'm going to beat the guy up all the time on the timeline, then like I want to, say, hey, like maybe I was wrong, right? Look at this. This is what we were all hoping for. And of course, it was very short lived. So sorry to cut you off there.
Oh no, it's with Jimmy, it's one of those things where like you feel like you've seen it all. And then and then he has a game like Sunday where he not only scores a safety but throws a pick six at the exact same time, and the pick six is negated by the safety. It's just, and then you have the clip of him. I uploaded it to my reels on my channel, kind of like a community, kind of like for, same thing as kind of like a TikTok, but him wording the words, all your plays suck, man. Like, I don't know, man. The feelings that I had years ago with this whole team and just the way Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch kind of built this thing up, I was very encouraged and like in a really good mental space with this team. But we're six years in, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just I have flashbacks and feelings of kind of like the end of the Harbaugh era, kind of going through me right now, where it's like whatever we've done is not working, and we haven't accomplished the goal that we all set out to, that the all teams set out to do at the end of every season. And, if it's Kyle Shanahan, having a bad fourth quarter, or Jimmy Garoppolo having a bad fourth quarter, or the NFC Championship game, Jimmy being hurt, there's always a reason. There's always some sort of something we fall back on. And like you said, the accountability is usually pretty non-existent. And it's just, I'm getting to a point now where it sucks because you watch this defense and you see how good they are, and you see how talented they are, and it's being wasted on this supposed offensive genius who they have a lot of weapons. That's the thing that really gets to me is it's not like the Niners are bereft of talent here. They have a lot of talent. And I don't know. He can't get anything out of Jimmy, it seems like, anymore. I don't know if Jimmy and him just are not on the same page. I mean, I know, Shanahan could be kind of prickly with his quarterbacks, even Trey Lance. But whatever has gone on this long for these many years is not working at this point. And my outlook is not the most positive outlook, and I'll be completely honest with you. And I know you'll touch on the Rams a little bit before we end this thing, but I have kind of a wait and see approach right now. I don't really know how to feel about the beginning of this season so far. I don't know if I should just completely think it's going to be a total train wreck, or do I need to be more hopeful and hope that Jimmy Garoppolo can somehow become at least a game manager at best, because he seems like he can't even do that right. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's I'm kind of with you. I am typically tend to be an optimist and try to always find the silver linings and everything. And I like I said, I do think that Jimmy will play better against the Rams than he did against the Broncos, partially because he typically plays really well against Rams. I think he's 6-1 against the Rams, or I don't count the first one when the Rams rested their starters. So let's say 5-1 against the Rams, but still, that's a great record. I think a lot of it comes down to offensive line. I think you can have a decent quarterback, because I think he's still decent, like maybe slightly below average in that 22 to 25 range, which is not good, but I think he's still, I do think he's starter quality. Just when you get to be that low of a starter, that is when teams start to try to replace you, though. That's not a long term starter anymore. More of an interim starter, a bridge starter. And that's what he is. He's a backup this year. So I do give Kyle credit for drafting Trey Lance and trying to solve the problem. And it seemed like the offense was a lot more efficient with Trey Lance. Like when I've been arguing with people about, Trey being better than Jimmy already, I just point to that less than one quarter against the Seahawks. Trey Lance's offense racked up 143 yards gained, and in the next three quarters, Jimmy's offense averaged less than 105 yards, and some of that was the big Debo run. But part of the reason why Debo was able to break out of the backfield was because one defender was, engaged with guarding Trey, right? I mean, there was at least one defender who had eyes on him instead of eyes on Debo. And I think, and obviously Taylor missed the tackle in the backfield. But I think if it had been Jimmy as the quarterback, there would have been another defender in the backfield along with Taylor. And, Debo certainly wouldn't have gotten 51 yards. So anyway, bottom line is I do give Kyle credit for that. And I do think, like people were saying, last year the wrinkle was Debo. They kind of got the offense going after a sluggish start, and there's no wrinkle this year. I do think that Trey would have been that wrinkle that would have helped to, um, you know, spice the run game up a little bit. And so now having Jimmy G, where it's 11 on 10 again, that definitely hurts things. I think losing Kyle McDaniel hurts. Not Kyle, Mike McDaniel hurts some as well too. Maybe not quite as much as being, said this week. I think there's, a little bit of an overreaction this week about that. Um, Somebody posted a statistic that said, that the Dolphins have like 185 rushing yards and the Niners have something like 440 or 415 or well over 400 yards rushing. So, I mean, yeah, the Dolphins are doing well, and the Niners are struggling, but it's also early. So, it'll be interesting to see how that looks after 17 games. I did see somebody pulled up one of Rob Stats Guerrera's pods where he had Joe Staley on, and Joe was definitely raving about what a genius Mike McDaniel is and how he sort of painted the picture and Kyle kind of would put it all together each week. And so there's no doubt Kyle's missing that a little bit.
Um, it's kind of interesting that we're talking about Kyle, because one of the next topic I had was, kind of blends right into it. Is should Kyle Shanahan be held responsible for the state of things? And I personally, I think blame can be assessed across the board, but mainly the two culprits for me after watching the game against the Broncos was, Jimmy 1 and maybe Kyle 1A. I mean, Jimmy played about as bad of a game as you could play as a quarterback, other than just, lining up on the other team's under other team center and playing for the other team. But I don't know. Kyle, to me, I don't know if he's just frustrated with Jimmy and he just doesn't really know what to do. If teams have kind of figured out the Niners kind of way of doing things as far as Debo and just the way they like to do everything. I just felt like everything was snuffed out against the Broncos. I know the Broncos, reportedly have a really good defense, and they look pretty stout. But this is year 6. He's got a losing record. A lot of people call him a genius. A lot of people are against the mindset of maybe, moving on from him one day, saying, that would be a huge mistake, and he's made us relevant again. But the fact of the matter is they're a losing team. They don't have a winning record. They haven't captured the ultimate prize, because to me, that's what it's all about. If you're not playing to win a championship, then what are you playing for? And at this point, I'm not content with just being competitive. I'm at the mindset that I would like to see us actually win a Lombardi, especially with some of the teams that we've had the last couple of years. It's not like I said, we're not bereft of talent. How much blame would you assess Kyle on just kind of everything? Just not really everything. Maybe just the offense as a whole, and maybe Jimmy Garoppolo and his way of handling everything.
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, like you said, it's been 6 years. We have a losing record. I like to make the excuse that he took over a 2-14 dumpster fire that was almost totally devoid of talent, and got us to a Super Bowl within 3 seasons, and that's great. But now it's been 3 seasons, or coming up on 3 seasons since then. So yeah, a little bit has to go his way. I mean, I do think it's unfair to say like we're wasting the defense on Kyle, because Kyle prioritizes D line heavily with draft picks and acquisitions and things like that. So I have to give him credit for at least the GM side of the defense. Um, where I get, less enchanted would be, bringing Jimmy back as a lame duck. Um, I liked it last week. I liked beating the Seahawks. I don't necessarily believe that Brock Purdy would have been able to do that. But, obviously this week with Denver Broncos is a whole different story. And just seeing the way Jimmy is, and it seems like he's kind of checked out and just kind of like has
Yeah.
an FU attitude. Um, so, uh, yeah, I mean, and ultimately, like, so for me, for the Broncos game, yeah, I was Jimmy 1, I was O-line 2, and I get part of that is that Trent Williams got injured, right? And so
Yeah.
you would say, well, like, okay, you lose the best left tackle in football. That's really hard to recover from. But then you see Jalen Moore comes in, and it's like the dude is just like,
Man.
it's like he's not even there. I mean, he doesn't even slowing people down, let alone blocking them. And then McKivitz came in, and he's serviceable, but I've been crying for right tackle and or just swing tackle and center for a while. I think 2 or 3 drafts now. Really, since Richburg went down in 2019, I've wanted a center.
Me too.
Um, so yeah, I blame Kyle for that. Definitely, blame Kyle for always wanting to have these veteran centers. And Alex Mack was really good last year. I'll give him that. But then look, he retires, right? Now we're left with Brendel, who's he's okay. I mean, he's not terrible, but he's not what you want in a Kyle Shanahan offense. Center is so important. It might be more important than right tackle, but it's certainly up there as like if it's not the second most important O lineman, it's 2B. And yeah, so that's an issue. And then like yeah, the whole relationship with Jimmy just seems to be soured. So that's an issue too. I just think we might have been better off with a cheaper QB who really wants it, who's really going to fight, and who isn't going to cause a divided locker room. And it doesn't seem like that's why Trey got injured, but boy, I mean, it doesn't seem like the locker room is 100%, behind Jimmy either, right? We know Brandon Ayuk isn't. I bet you Danny Gray isn't either, and I'm sure they're not the only ones. I mean, we know Kittle, McGlinchey, and Juice are all Team Jimmy for sure.
Oh, 100%. I want to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah. Anytime.
You heard about that, like, supposed, like, there's like a 15 player kind of council or something on this team that Shanahan went to. I don't know how many vets or something when he decided to make the change and he was going to go with Trey. And, you know, I find that kind of interesting, to say the least, that they have like that sort of thing. But in a way, I respect it. The fact that he's got some veterans that he goes to, and when he's making like team wide decisions. But the one thing that really got to me was after the injury to Trey Lance, was when Jimmy scored that touchdown and everyone was patting him on the helmet and hugging him and all that stuff and embracing him. That really, my nephew is a 49ers fan. He's only like 27. It did not sit well with my nephew, and it didn't sit well with me either. They treat this guy like he's the conquering hero, like he's won so many games for them, and that they won a championship with him and all this stuff. And then I felt like that was an indirect shot at Trey Lance, the fact that he just doesn't have that backing from some of the guys. And, you have Juszczyk after the game talking about going back to playing 49er football. And that really, it's just like you get your quote of, oh yeah, we feel for Trey, but it was like such a quick transition emotionally for me. And it really bothers me that we have people on this team that rather live with mediocrity and know that they're only going to get mediocrity because they get along with somebody than have a kid who, yeah, maybe he falls on his face this year. There's a good chance he might have because he's just that inexperienced and raw. But what about what comes on the other side of this? And that could be so much more and so much better than Jimmy. And this year we'll never know. And I don't know what people think. It's almost like people have short-term memory issues when Jimmy disappears for a bit and you have somebody else under center, and then all of a sudden he comes back, and then we're all reminded just how kind of cruddy he really plays most of the time and how much the team really has to carry him most of the time. A lot of people always like to say Jimmy took us to the Super Bowl or Jimmy has been a winning quarterback and all this. And it's like they give no credit to the players who were the ones that were really behind all that. And I don't know. I just have a sour taste in my mouth. I feel like, the old days, it was all about winning championships. Now it seems like it's more or less like a good old boys club where everybody gets along, and winning is kind of almost secondary to me. I don't know. I felt really bad for Trey after that injury. I felt really bad that everybody was kind of just treating Jimmy as if he was Joe Montana returning in the flesh. And I don't know. It's a lot of people are saying, like, move on from Juszczyk, move on from McGlinchey, move on from Kittle, and then, we won't have this issue. I don't know if I agree with all that, but there's definitely a divide for sure in that locker room, and it's pretty evident just with the way some people reacted once that injury happened.
Well, and then you look at some of the reactions after the Broncos game where, I don't know, I thought I saw a report that Ebukam had to be held back or something like that he was ready to just tear somebody apart.
Good.
Yeah, no, exactly. And obviously you could see Mooney Ward was mad as hell. It was a stark contrast to,
They gave up 9 points without
Yeah.
that safety. 9 points. And that's not enough. To me, dude, Eric Davis, who's been kind of on the Jimmy apology train and trying to say that he could win them a Super Bowl, he did say one thing, and I know you saw it because you're pretty active on Twitter, as am I, where he said he would be fighting, offensive, coaches and players. Bro, a good way to
100%.
cause a divide in a locker room is people not holding their weight, man. That defense balled out. They played fantastic. They can't be perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. The fact that Fred Warner kind of almost like bit the bullet for the team, saying we could have done more. I know in his heart he feels completely opposite of that statement.
They had 9 3-and-outs.
Right.
Like, I posted a stat about it where basically, like, it's like a second time ever that a defense has held a team to 9 3-and-outs and actually lost the game. It never happens. I think it was in my article, my Broncos summary article. And yeah, it's ridiculous. And another thing that I would blame Kyle Shanahan for is running Trey too much up the middle,
Yeah, I
get
agree
him
with
injured.
that.
And the first time, and everybody says, oh, it was an option. It was an option. Well, yeah, the option was hand to Ray or run up the middle, so, and guess what? The chances of them defending Ray went up exponentially after they'd just been burned by Debo for 51 yards on the exact same play. So you bet your butt that linebacker was in position to snuff out Ray, and it was the right call for Lance to run up the middle. It's just an unfortunate ending. I mean, I'm not saying that Kyle tried to do it on purpose. I just think that 12 runs per game is too many.
Oh yeah.
I think you're looking at like 6 to 8 is still enough to make them respect Trey's running ability and make them account for Trey to get that 11 on 11. You know, football that is so beneficial to the run game, and it helps the passing game too. Quite honestly, um, but yeah, so that's another area where I would definitely I've been blaming Kyle is too many designed runs and too many options that were likely to lead to Trey running up the middle. And people say, well, running backs run up the middle. Ted, running backs run up the middle. And it's like, well, yeah, running backs aren't 6'4", 220, you know. They're they're stockier guys. They have a lower center of gravity, because ultimately what happened to Trey was he got stuff and he fell backwards awkwardly, right? I mean, if he had a lower center of gravity or thicker ankles or whatever the case may be, chances of him getting injured on that play go down dramatically. So it's not apples
Um,
to apples.
Chris Wall had a couple interesting points here. Where is it? He says, he says an option to run up the middle shouldn't even be in the playbook. Outside options or not at all. And I completely agree. I've never understood why running runs up the gut with a quarterback isn't even in your playbook. Um, to me, this talk that maybe he's not quite ready, so the Niners going to have to use him with what he's good at first until his passing can come around, kind of stuff. Wouldn't your passing come around if you attempted more passes and were using your arm more within the game instead of having only 3 passing attempts going into the second quarter? Like,
100%.
I don't know if Kyle can develop quarterbacks, Ted. I really don't. And at this point, from what we've seen since 2017, I think the answer to that so far is no. Chris Wall says Kyle was irresponsible, but Lance at best. And again, I completely agree with that as well. It's just I was heartbroken. I don't know how you felt. I don't know how much what your age is. I'm 43 almost, and I remember how I felt when Montana was hurt in that Giants playoff game all those years ago in 1991.
Yeah.
And it wasn't quite to that level because Joe had done so much, but I was physically, like, completely mentally checked out of that Seahawks game for a good majority of it until maybe like the fourth quarter when I knew we were going to win. I know this is one of the topics we talked about, but how did you feel about that particular instance when it happened? How emotionally kind of like, oh my God, really? Were you when you saw Trey went down?
Well, at first I thought it was a concussion
So did I, because that's the
because his hel-
broadcast.
because his helmet kind of was ajar, and so yeah, and also because he tried to get up, and so I was pretty sure it wasn't a tibia fracture, because the tibia and the femur, they're so big. When you fracture a bone like that, there's like instant pain, and you don't even try to get up and put weight on it the way he was allowing the teammates to try and pull him up, basically. And with a bigger bone in the leg fracture, you just people they know instantly. There's a loud snap and instant pain. But how did I feel? I felt like, Jesus Christ, there goes our season. I mean,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's exactly how I felt, because I do think Jimmy G is a pretty good backup, but he's a backup for a reason, and it's because I don't think we're ever going to get to number 6 with him. Um,
100% agree.
yeah, I mean, it could. We could. I'm not gonna say it can't happen this year, because our defense is so good, and we haven't even seen it with Jimmy Ward yet. I mean, and I do believe Jimmy Ward's a lot better than Gibson, especially as far as a hitter. Like, Gibson just doesn't seem to hit guys. He may be a little bit better of a ball hawk, but Jimmy Ward is, I think, a better tackler and a better hitter, and I think better cover guy too. But yeah, so yeah, my heart sunk. Especially once they brought out the cart, and then I was thinking, well, maybe it's just a dislocation and not a break. Maybe he could be back in 8 weeks, but even then, you're like, what's left of the season after that? Um, yeah, no, it's terrible. Just the worst. I love the kid. I'm so excited about his future, and now we have to wait a year, at least a year. I mean, assuming that everything goes well, knock
Yeah.
on wood. that the everything heals up properly. I think because he's 22, there's a good chance of that. Much better than if you're over 30, right? But and as far as my age, I've been a faithful since '76, so I won't I won't disclose my exact age, but it's definitely a lot older than 43 because I think
Gotcha.
that's more than 43 years. And I didn't come out of the womb as a Niners fan. It took me a few years before I
Yeah, I was born in
learned to
79. I was
appreciate.
born in 79, and I didn't really get into football until about 89, 90. So,
Yeah, I'm 1970. So, but yeah, so it's a heartbreaker, and and just something to look forward to in 2023, though, at least.
Chris Wall says, my wife was trying to help me see the potential positives over the situation, which I always do. And it couldn't change the fact that I felt like part of me died. Now, I didn't feel like part of me died, but I just couldn't enjoy us beating Seattle as much as I love to see Seattle get their freaking faces stomped because Seattle really sucks. They're not a good team. So it's not like we were, blowing the doors off of the Seattle that we faced back in like the mid to, 2010s. This is a rebuilding Seattle Seahawks team with a really pretty averagely pretty average roster other than, maybe like wide receiver. I don't know much about their defense or any other skill positions, but I think the wide receiver, they're pretty good, what
Quandre
Lockett.
Diggs is a hell of a safety,
And he's a pretty good, he's a pretty good
and
safety
they have
too.
that one Jordan Brooks is a hell of a linebacker, and I guess this Uzuma Usu, their defensive end that they got from the Chargers has been pretty good. But it's pretty sparse after that for most of that team, especially cornerback. They got those two rookies in there. Um, yeah, and they got some good-looking rookie offensive linemen, but they're rookies. They'll probably
Right.
be real good in a year or two, but not game two of their rookie season.
One thing that got me when Trey got hurt, and then I've seen Jimmy how he played against the Broncos. The West is a gettable division this year. That's the thing that really, really
Yeah, I
it
mean,
discourages me.
Seahawks are bad. Cards look just like, you know, they look like they don't care. They look like, I mean, talk about a coach that looks like he's lost the locker room. That's Cliff Kingsbury.
He's so
Now,
overrated. I can't stand him.
he is. Now, unfortunately for us, this is D-Hopless cards, and he'll be back for both of the games against us, which
Of
could
course.
make them look quite a bit different with one of the best receivers in football bolstering that offense and helping Kyler. Um, but yeah, I've never been a huge Kyler Murray fan. I've always felt like, the trick to him is just to mush rush him and contain him in the pocket and make him beat you with his arm. Because he's a little guy and he has trouble seeing over the O line. We saw that with Russ in Denver the other night. Like there was a pass where he threw, you know, the O line was in his way and he was trying to throw, and there's a guy wide open and he just threw it behind him because he couldn't see him over the line. So yeah, and then the Rams are gettable. I mean, are we moving on to that yet? Maybe
No, we could no, we
good
could talk about it.
segue.
It was kind of one of our last things that we were going to talk about, but with the time constraints, we could kind of go back and we can kind of like cross talk stuff if you want. Um, yeah, the Rams to me, they still got a really good quarterback. They
Yep.
still have Cooper Cup, so that's
Yep.
always a problem. I mean, we got mollywopped last in the playoffs last year with him and Odell Beckham.
Mhm.
Eh, yeah, they're definitely gettable this year. Right? I think they're less talented as a team altogether than they were when we faced them last year. But the overriding factor, Ted, and the one constant variable is Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh
Jimmy
yeah.
Garoppolo is why I have zero confidence. At least with Trey, we didn't know. And a lot of people say, well, isn't that kind of dangerous? Well, you know what, dude? If like say this season we, I don't know, say we went what is that? It was 17 games. So we had a losing record or a 500 record actually you can't have a 500 record, but like I would like to see what Trey could have been on the other side of all this, all the growing pains or whatever. With Jimmy, you know exactly what Jimmy is. Jimmy is I can't even say he's a game manager because he does stuff that game managers don't do. He throws away games. He makes boneheaded decisions in crucial times. Uh Rams to me
He's a gunslinger mentality with a game manager arm.
he's got a pea shooter for an arm, but he's got a gunslinger mentality. I forgot who said that. Somebody said pea shooter. I thought that was hilarious.
That's pretty good. Well, it's just that he doesn't step in. His mechanics are rotten. He keeps his weight on his back foot.
Me and my brother were talking about that. My brother's a big Dolphins fan, by the way, so he's pretty stoked that they're 3-0.
Boy.
But yeah, he's like he's. I told him, I said, Jimmy's always fading back when he throws. He's always fading back when he throws. I've never seen Jimmy one time. You know how Joe Montana was. He would take his drop, he would hitch up in the pocket, and he would throw. And it was just the most beautiful, seamless, effortless. He almost looked like he was like just like, I don't know. It's hard to explain. Like Montana made everything look easy. Even for young, things looked a little more difficult because he had that left-handed delivery and it was kind of crossbody and it looked like there was kind of a windup involved. With Montana, it was always so easy. And yeah, I was watching the Super Bowl 24 highlights the other night because I was just feeling like, yeah, I was in a good mood. I'm like, oh, Niners Broncos. And then I go and I watch Jimmy and it's just like, oh my God, he has some of the worst mechanics and he's not like the biggest guy. So it's not like he can just sit there and flick that thing off his wrist and have it go 60 yards. I mean, he's just 9 years into the league or 8 years, however many years in the league. And his mechanics almost seem like they've gotten worse over time and not better, especially in a Kyle Shanahan offense. You think that would be something they would, kind of bang it on his head that, mechanics. I don't see it. So.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the only good thing is that he has played the Rams well. His quick release has helped to nullify their pass rush some in the past. I think we'll need it with Aaron Donald going against our, inexperienced interior offensive line. Yeah, they've definitely gotten worse. They lost Whitworth, their left tackle. They lost Corbett, their right guard, uh, and a lot of other guys in the offseason. And I felt like we had a huge come up in the offseason. The Niners got way better. However, since the season started, we've had a lot of injuries. Obviously, with Jimmy Ward and Brunskill before the season began. With Kittle, now he's back, luckily. And then obviously Mitchell and Ty Davis Price. But the Goocher, of course, is Aziz Al-Shire was bad, but the Goocher is Trent Williams. I will say I would rather have McKivitz and McGlinchey, our tackles we have now, than the tackles we had week 18, which was McKivitz and Compton. I'd rather have McGlinchey than Compton. No, you like Compton?
No, I agree with you on McGlinchey, but barely.
Barely,
I'm not a big
kind of like tomato potato, right?
Yeah, it's what they call it, dollars to donuts or whatever the saying is. I don't know.
No, I hear you, but yeah, the Rams have gotten a lot worse. Plus, then the Rams have had some injuries that weren't off season. Or well, Van Jefferson had knee surgery in the off season. He was supposed to be back week 1, and then he wasn't coming back, and all of a sudden they just put him on IR. So now he's out till at least week 6. You mentioned OBJ; he's not even re-signed with anyone right now. They got Allen Robinson, but I don't know that he is what everybody thinks he is. I don't think he's OBJ or Robert Woods, to be honest. And then they lost their center. Brian Allen had a little knee procedure that's supposed to be 2 to 4 weeks. So that's 3 of their starting offensive linemen from last year are not there this year. And they drafted this guy named, I think is Logan Bruss, but Bruss is his last name for sure, from Wisconsin. And he was supposed to take over the right guard duties, and like he was losing out to some like 4-year journeyman who has only played a handful of games in his career, and then he got injured, and so he's out for the season. So they lost a ton of depth on their O-line plus starters, and Stafford needs a good O-line. He is somebody, I forget who it was, maybe it was Grant, said that he's like Jimmy G but with a big arm, because he makes dumb mistakes, but one thing I will say about Stafford is he does seem to do well in fourth quarters. He does have a lot of comeback wins, even for the crummy Lions team. But yeah, I think they are beatable. I think we can get a lot of pressure on Stafford. I think we still have a really good linebacking core with Fred and Dre and Flanagan Fowles. Although I think we maybe might want to see some more like 3 safety looks and bring in Tarvarius Moore, to along with Hufanga and Gibson. We'll see. But ultimately, like, the defense is playing well. They may need to. I think you mentioned Fred did kind of jump on his sword after the Denver game, and
Yeah,
I
he
mean
definitely fell on the sword.
the one thing you can say is that they didn't get any turnovers, and the D didn't score, and not that nine, 3 and outs isn't enough. I thought it was, but I would love to see them get something like that against the Rams, because obviously last time we really shellacked the Rams in Week 10 of 2021, uh, Jimmy Ward had the pick and the pick six that really helped us. So something along those lines, I think, would be helpful. I think Debo needs to have one of his typical Ram killer games. I would say George Kittle, but I think he's going to be busy helping with McKivitz and McGlinchey on the edges. I don't think he's going to be running a lot of routes, sadly, against the Rams. Ayuk will need to do well, and I think we'll need to run well. I think I saw someone saying that the Rams are something like 16th in run defense. And so that's a lot worse than the Broncos, who were fifth going into our game last week. And I'm sure they got better after that game that they had against us. So, I think we need to run the ball a lot, and short passes, because Lord knows Jimmy can't do much else. And I think we still need to try some long ones, just to keep the defense honest. To keep
Does
them.
his arm look worse than it has in the past, or does it
I don't,
look about the same to you?
it's been pretty bad all along. I mean, he's like,
Yeah.
on 30 plus yard plays, he was something like 16% with one TD and 5 interceptions for his career. So he's always been bad at deep throws. He just had some 20-yard catches that weren't 20 air yards, right? Like where he threw it 5 yards or 10, and then we got a lot of yak on it. But yeah, no, he's been pretty bad. Even a lot of the big ones from 2019 were underthrown.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The
you
one
know, the
to
one-
a couple to
both.
Emmanuel
Yeah,
Sanders,
yeah. In New
one against
Orleans.
the Rams and against
Yeah,
New Orleans. They were both poorly underthrown balls.
yeah. No, exactly. And so he had one nice one to Kittle against the Green Bay Packers in 2019. But even then, Kittle was so wide open. Who even knows if he even maybe slowed down a little to get it? You wouldn't even have noticed, because there was nobody in the screen with him. So, um, yeah, no, Jimmy's tough, but I do think he'll play better. I mean, obviously, that was one of his worst games against the Broncos, and he's had a lot of bad games early in seasons. And I know it wasn't technically the first game this season, because he came in for 3 quarters, a little over 3 quarters, against the Seahawks. But yeah, I mean, he typically we've only one time have lost back-to-back games with Jimmy G as our quarterback. So I hope this isn't the second one. I hope I'm not jinxing us by saying that, but I do. I mean, I do think that he'll play better. I'm not necessarily going to try and guarantee a win right now, but the Rams are beatable. I'll say that for sure. Like, if we don't beat ourselves, we can beat the Rams.
Yeah, and I think with their defense as good as it is and how much it's improved, especially secondary wise, I think we have a great chance to play good defense against them. Uh, Speaking of the defense, I'm gonna try to knock out some of these last topics so we can get out of here at the top of the hour.
Sure.
It's been fantastic. It's been top five, top three, top, I don't know, top one. My issue, and this kind of these topics go together, is elite defense is wasted. And to me, the longer they're on the field in these games, the injuries are going to continue to pile up. I mean, we have Aziz Al-Shaair out. We already have Jimmy Ward out, and we didn't have Eric Armstead the last game. And I just have this feeling like we're gonna burn these guys out. And the best way to get people injured is to overexpose them and to overuse them. And right now, the 49ers they're on a really insane clip to get this defense hurt pretty badly. But the amount of time that they're on the field, because the offense is just so inefficient right now. So, are you concerned about the injuries affecting this really great defense if they continue to be on the field so much?
Absolutely. And, even if they stay healthy, God, how many times have we seen them get tired at the end of games because the offense, can't sustain drives and can't give them time to rest in between series. They just go three and out, three and out, three and out, three and out. So yeah, I'm concerned about both for sure. Um, yeah, I think we got to figure out a way to run the ball a little bit better. And Jimmy needs to be more like he was in 2019, where he was converting those third downs. I think we only converted one third down against the Broncos out of like 10 or 11, and it was towards the end of the game. So third down efficiency needs to go up, and hopefully by practicing a little more with the team will help synchronize that timing a little bit better because it was clearly off Sunday night.
And No Border Sports, Ryan says, I get depressed when Jimmy starts. CJ Gray says, yeah, I lose motivation when 10 runs out there. Same here. He says, I'd rather watch Brock suck or not than the same thing and nail biting games with some BD. Bad defense? I don't know. Bullshit ending. Okay. Yeah. It's to me, when you ride your defense as much as we're riding our defense, it doesn't spell a good ending to this. Just, I mean, they're on a record. They're on a record pace right now to do some real damage as far as like, just rankings and in yards and all that stuff. But if they're continuing to be on the field, then I don't see how that continues.
I will say too, just like don't get too over enamored with the D based off of the first three opponents.
Yes.
I have
Yeah,
to
you're
say
right.
it was Fields in the rain, and it was Geno, and Russ has been a little rusty so far this year. They
Yeah,
the,
it
the
was a
Den-
true test is coming this Monday night for sure. You are correct on that.
yeah, the Rams will be our biggest test so far this season for sure of this defense.
Quick question for you. I sent this topic to you earlier. Do you think Kittle is cooked? Because I'm starting to think he's on the downward slope in his career, just personally, just based on the injuries and just, I don't know. I don't. Just to me, it's like a feeling thing. It's not really like necessarily like. I mean, he gets hurt a lot. He has issues staying on the field, but like, what do you think of Kittle? Is he on the downward slope, or are the Niners smart to maybe move on from him sooner than later and maybe get something for him, or is he just struggling because the quarterback play is so bad?
Yeah, I mean, quite a few of his injuries were due to high throws, two by Jimmy and one by Mullins. So three out of his last five. I don't know how the groin pull happened in practice. There's really no information on that I'm
Yeah,
aware
that's
of.
that's really tough, especially with the amount of time and money and effort that he puts into his off-season workouts. Like, really?
Yeah,
Out of
no,
all people?
it was frustrating as hell for sure. But no, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think Kittle's cooked. I do think, last season, what he had 14 games and almost 1,000 yards. Um, and in 2020, obviously, he had those both injuries. One was a high throw from Jimmy in the Cards game to start the season, and that sprained his MCL. And then obviously the high pass from Mullins when he broke his foot. Um, so like since he signed his contract, he's missed quite a bit of games. But then if you go back before that, he really hadn't missed a lot.
Yeah,
I yeah, I think a lot of it is, again, comes back to O line, and the O line not being able to block causes him to have to block too much, including pass block, not just run block, but pass
yeah.
block too. So, I mean, I just think that if you get him on the right team, and it could be our team if we build it right, I still think he's got a lot left in the tank. But yeah, I don't know how I can prove that until we probably not until Trent Williams gets back this season, and we'll see if Kittle's still healthy then.
Uh, uh, quick question, and then we'll give a score prediction for the game. Um, I made a comment on Twitter, and some people kind of took it as a negative shot, and I don't really care at this point. I'm being honest for the first time in a long time with how I feel about the 49ers. I feel like Danny Gray is now he's obsolete with Jimmy back in the lineup, like 100%. And I think that one of the reasons that the 49ers drafted him is they were going to pair him with a guy like Trey Lance, who could, make use of that speed and that deep threat. And now that we're back to the same old, pea shooter arm, I called it the other day, and some people were like, "That's not true. Jimmy will get him in there, and you just got to have faith. And your energy is bad. You talk badly about the Niners. Listen, I'm calling a spade a spade. Have we seen him in the first 3 weeks of the year? No, we haven't seen anything. I don't even know if he's been active. Why would he be? Well, what's your take on the whole Danny Gray thing? You think he's even going to make much of a splash this year, or are we going to have to wait till 2022?
Some of that is him just being a rookie. Some of it was like that wet field. You can't really, his speed gets nullified by the wet field in Chicago. He was active for the Seahawks game. I don't know about the Denver Broncos game. I don't remember seeing him on the inactives list, so I would assume he was active for both games. He did make a nice 22-yard catch in traffic over the middle from Sudfeld against Green Bay. I was at that game at Levi's in the preseason. But and he did just barely miss getting his feet down on a deep out where Trey Lance was throwing to his right. It was Trey Lance's only incompletion. He was 4 for 5 in that game. And it was just because Trey was a little bit late. It wasn't Danny Gray's fault, in my opinion. It looked like he got a foot down, but it was like his first foot was a foot out. And he like did full extension, going out of bounds to get it. So
I remember
that. I do think that he is a complete receiver. I don't think he's just a go route guy. So I do think that he has the potential to where if Kyle can be a little more creative with him and not just scheme the go routes, we might see him a little bit more. I think we'll see, obviously, we're going to see Juwan Jennings on the base downs, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a little Danny Gray in there on the second and long and third and long plays. Finding a more creative way to get him the ball. I do think, like I said, that he's not like just a track guy trying to play football. He is.
Yeah, I did notice him in the preseason looking a little bit more well-rounded as a receiver. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
they were sending him over the middle and stuff. He didn't look too bad, to be honest with you.
Just happens to have track speed, so I think it just could be a comfortability thing because Jimmy obviously didn't work with him at all over the summer. So I think it could take a little more time in practice for those two to develop on, but I wouldn't be surprised to see some Danny Gray some this season. I don't think we'll have to wait for Trey to get back before we see some flash from Danny Gray. I don't think it'll be anywhere near what it would have been if Trey had stayed healthy.
Right.
But yeah, later once they develop some synergy, I would expect to see some Danny Gray.
A couple quick comments. A lot of them are saying, I wouldn't doubt it if he's in Kyle's doghouse, Danny Gray. I hope not. Use him in a wide receiver reverse. Kyle needs to use him, whether that takes creativity or not. And CJ Gray, Danny Gray with Jimmy, kind of useless. I would like to be proven wrong, and I'm gonna hold Ted to what he said. Hopefully, the Niners could figure out a way to get him the ball. Maybe he cracks that lineup. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll see him against the Rams. I'm open for it because I think the Niners could use somebody with a little bit of top end speed that could take the top off, even though it really wouldn't really do well with Jimmy. But I don't know. Maybe the Niners, like you said, they could be creative, find a way to get a ball in space. I know the screen game was pretty non-existent against the Broncos. They seemed like they were sniffing those out pretty much at will, but we'll see. Real quick, guys, and then we're going to get out of here because Ted's got a heart out. Your prediction for the game Monday night.
Goodness. I think it'll be a lot higher scoring than the Broncos Niners. So I'll say Niners 24 and Rams 21.
I'm going 49ers 31, Rams 24. I feel like the Niners come out doing well, moving the ball, scoring, and I think the Rams come on late, but the Niners get a defensive stop, turnover, sack, fumble, something that will turn the game at the end. So hopefully that's the case. Chris Wallace is Niners 17, Rams 10. Thank you, Mariah. Thank you for everybody that was in here. Sorry I wasn't really active in the chat tonight. I really was focusing on making sure we got out on time because I try to respect people's schedules. So as me and Ted keep doing these, I'll definitely get a more of a feel how things are going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I really wanted to let him shine because I've seen Ted on Grant Cohn's before, and I think Ted does fabulous. Very well informed, very well spoken. And when the guest is on, you try to highlight the guest. So for anybody who hopefully didn't take exception to that, that's just how I do things. So everybody, it's been great. Thank you so much for popping in here. Ted, thank you for coming on. And hopefully we can keep this on a regular basis. And once your channel gets up and going, I'll be more than happy to jump on there. So everybody take care. Everybody have a great rest of your Wednesday night. And we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.
Thanks, Aaron.